It's an uprising, rising up. Uprising, rising up. Uprising, fight the power. It's an uprising.
Wow, that was great. Hello, we are live, and this is the Illinois Green Party podcast. I have my guest, Scott Free. He's an Illinois Green Party organizer along with me. And we have two very special guests, Safia and Hajra. Hi, everybody. So that music you heard at the beginning, that is Scott's original material. You want to tell us a little bit about that, Scott?
Yeah, sure. That's called Uprising. It features a Nigerian artist, Agosa, and it's part of an album that I did. It's all kind of sing-along protest songs, like very Pete Seeger-ish, if folks know who Pete Seeger is. He's like from way back in the folky days. But I wanted stuff that would be kind of sing-along that you could play at protests, you could learn and sing at a campfire or something like that. So they're very simple songs. But yeah, so it's called Songs That Fight Oppression, and I released it last January. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, check that out.
Yeah.
Ladies, some protest music.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, ladies, would you like to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves? Whoever wants to go first.
Sure.
Safia is fine.
Yeah. So my name is Safia. I just got elected last week as the new chair of the Cook County Green Party.
Woo!
Along with my partner in awesomeness.
Yeah.
Nice.
My name is Hajra, and I also just got elected as vice chair of the Cook County Green Party with my partner in awesomeness.
Yay.
We're not gonna say partner in crime because we ain't committing no crime.
Oh.
We're getting the more criminals.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're good trouble. That's what we do.
Yes.
Well, that is incredible. So, how are you liking it so far? I'm sure it's a lot. Anyway.
I like her. I love working with her.
Good start. That's a really good start.
We were off to a lot of good trouble at the Divinity School at the University of Chicago. That's actually where we met.
So both of us are graduates of the University of Chicago.
Okay.
We both did our master's program there together. And now we're just, community members of Hyde Park. But we kind of garnered a reputation for ourselves in the neighborhood as, a
good one.
Good reputation as people who kind of stir the pot in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
We cook some deliciousness. to write on your metaphor. So me and Hajra, when we started at the Divinity School, we started in 2021. She was in a 2-year program. I was in a 3-year program. I did a master's degree in chaplaincy. I just graduated. And Hajra did a master's in divinity, which was a 2-year program. So she's my senior. Wow.
I am.
You graduated a year ahead of me. And so right when we got there, we realized that the Divinity School, although it's supposed to be like scholars and experts in religion, knew really nothing about Islam or how to cater to its Muslim students. We were there for the diversity, but they didn't do any work to do the inclusion. And so there was obvious alienation and discrimination that we faced from day one. And there was a lack of willingness to learn. But that didn't stop us from trying. We really tried our best. We tried to initiate a bunch of different DEI programs. I'm not sure if I believe in DEI anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, right.
But one of the initiatives that we did was we did a Ramadan art exhibit, which we've continued to do, and it's in its 3rd year. This upcoming Ramadan, it'll be its 3rd year. And so what we did was we did this open call to Muslim artists from across the country and around the world, giving special attention to Chicago-based artists. And we wanted to show, not just tell, because we were tired of talking. Like, no matter how eloquent we were, no matter how many facts we had, when the professor was saying one thing and we were saying something else, people, appease power. what can we say? And so when we did the Ramadan art exhibit, the objective was to show people that Islam was a religion of beauty, and that Muslims worshipped God in a beautiful way, and that God, one of his 99 names in the Islamic tradition, is the most beautiful. So God has 99 names, and we know him through those names, and one of them is the most beautiful. And we realized that this Islamophobic kind of academy had no capacity to conceptualize Allah as the most beautiful. And so we showed them, and we've been showing them for the last 3 years. And now that we've graduated from the university, it'll be our first year having the art exhibit outside. But we we pretty much find ourselves taking on projects wherever we're needed.
Yeah.
And we just felt like there wasn't a lot of traction happening in electoral politics. We were engaged in anti-genocide activism this past year.
The whole year,
Really intensely, right? And we were trying to shift with the movement as it shifted. We were, trying different tactics. I was heavily involved in the student encampments at the University of Chicago. And then we were looking towards the DNC to be the beginning of shifting into electoral politics as a new strategy. And when we were just watching what looked like to be exhaustion, demoralization, and a lack of proper vision and strategy when it came to electoral politics. I think a lot of people were putting all of their eggs in the basket of the Democrats waking up with a consciousness and acknowledging Palestinian life and suffering. And when that didn't happen, they really didn't have a plan B. And so we realized that if the leaders in the movement weren't going to shift into a proper electoral strategy, we would have to step up just for our own responsibility and consciousness. And so we looked into the Green Party. We met Zoe Ma, right? Hadra.
Talk about that? Yeah, I came across Zoe at a bazaar that I just happened to be selling my clothes. I have a clothing brand. I was selling my clothes there.
Beautiful designer, by the way. You should see. What's your brand?
It's called Arzuke Designs. Follow us on Instagram.
Spell it for them. Spell it.
ARZUK Designs.
Boom.
Thank
you.
Instagram.
But I was selling at that market, and there weren't a lot of customers there, sadly. But Zoe came up, and she just distracted me from that completely because she asked me where I was from. I told her I was from Hyde Park, and she started talking to me about the student activism that was happening around the different college campuses.
Mm-hmm.
And then she told me about Jill Stein. And I said, oh yeah, I've heard of Jill Stein. Like personally, ever since, the Democrats just showed failure after failure to show any kind of consideration or acknowledgement of like every humanitarian like disaster that kept piling up. Me and Safia had a conversation like many months ago where we were like, we're not voting Democrat.
No.
And ever since then, I had been, thinking passively about who am I going to vote for in this coming election. I really don't know. And
we thought we were going to vote for Cornel West, actually.
We actually
first
considered Cornel West when he first, announced his campaign. And Jill Stein or Zoe Ma, I met Zoe Ma, and she was telling me about how the Illinois ballot access fiasco with the Illinois Green Party, how all signatures weren't being collected. Zoe had to manually file in all the wards for Jill to be a write-in candidate.
Yep.
And it was at that moment where I was like, what can I do to kind of help you? Because I see you, just a community member just like me, who's doing the most and kind of holding a really big responsibility and a potential like powerful responsibility on her shoulders.
Yeah.
And she was as energetic as she always is.
Yeah, from what I understand.
Even in that conversation where she was like, this is where we are at. And so she told me we should meet. We should have chai together. And I said, bet, let me bring my friend Safia. And then so we had another meeting with Zoe, with Safia, and we decided to join the party
that day
after that meeting.
Yeah, we're so happy you're here. We're so happy you're here.
We ran our campaign the day after, and then in that one day campaign, we over 60 people, new members joined, and then we were elected. It was a 3-day win-roll.
well, that's the kind of energy we need. I mean, the Jill Stein campaign is leading the way and inspiring people because she's out there all the time. She's all over social media, everywhere. I don't know how when that woman sleeps, but and her policies are fantastic. I got to meet her in Homewood a couple of months ago. She's a very kind and thoughtful person, and I'm like, that's what we need in charge. And I've been involved with the ceasefire protests here in my town of Carbondale for almost a year. As soon as I found them, I joined them. I went to DC twice and got to be in the big ones, the one in November and then the one in January. And
we were at the one in November as well.
Really? Yeah. I've never felt so loved and at home and so American than to be like protesting my government in the streets of DC. So I'm sure Scott has some stories as well.
Oh, sure. I mean, my comment was going to be that one of the really, really encouraging things is to see the polling that's come out that Jill Stein is leading among Muslims and Arab Americans in many states, like leading. And that's just phenomenal. I mean, it is amazing that a third-party candidate is getting that much traction within any kind of demographic that you want to throw up there. But it's incredible, and it's very encouraging. And yeah, I mean, my world is kind of the LGBT queer music and arts community of Chicago. I've been in there for a long time. And I fully expected with our moral kind of core to all be just fully horrified about this genocide and wanting to do anything we can, including saying no to the Democratic Party. And I got complete opposite from everyone I know. And it hurts. It actually really, really hurts that I feel like I have, and this does feel important. This is like Holocaust importance. And I feel like I have to cut off almost everyone that I've known in my past and kind of start anew, because I am shocked that people are going to accept this and still their brains are completely duopoly controlled, completely. And it's not okay with me that it's just, wait, is it just because they're brown, or is it just because they're Muslim, or is I can't quite grasp why there's just kind of there's a block. And they all know that the person
they all know
they're voting for.
And I get a lot of people that tell me, they get that pained look on their face when I mention it, and I mention it everywhere I go to almost everyone I see. And I always relate it to, you need to vote for Jill Stein to the point people just start to run from me, I think. But, I'm like, that pain you have, if you get out in the street, you'll feel better. If you vote for Jill Stein, you'll feel better. And, Shama Sawant, love her to pieces. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Someday I hope to meet her. But she was Seattle City Council. She started the Worker Strike Back. She was the first socialist elected, I think.
Yep.
And she got the $15 an hour minimum wage passed in Seattle. She got rent control. She made an Amazon tax. Amazon tried to take her out. They couldn't.
Yeah.
But she's Worker Strike Back. I joined them, and we voted to endorse Jill. So, but their goal is literally to deny Harris the win because she doesn't deserve it, because she is supporting, funding, running cover, lying about genocide. And and
she's a worker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to win, of course. Jill wants to win. I want to beat both of them. If I would love that, However, if all we do is beat Kamala, that is a warning shot to the next administration that you need to pay attention to us because we can defeat you.
Right. Right.
So, yeah.
No, the Green Party does have power. They are,
Yeah.
as the $1 Million Attack ad shows, we have power. We absolutely have power. Yep.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
And, you know, the other thing that's been this whole thing since October 7th, I knew about the situation in Gaza just because I'm a little more in touch with things. So I have a song on the album, A Palestinian in Gaza, and I did it like 2 years previous to October 7th. But the thing that has happened is now our whole country has learned about the 75-year history of the attacks on Palestinians, and we didn't know any of that. So what does that mean? That means that we've been propagandized our entire lives with Islamophobic content. And that's, you know, and, you know, I'll talk to people and I'll try to convince them, which to me seems so obvious that you would be against genocide. And I talk to them and I'm like, oh my God, they're Islamophobic. That's what it is. That's what's going on.
Well, I would say that is true for some people. I don't know very many, but I know maybe one or two. For the majority of people I know, they don't understand how it's related to the violence that happens in our country. It has everything to do with cop cities.
Yes.
It has everything to do with the violence at our colleges. It has everything to do with the violence against Black people. You know, the whole thing that started the Black Lives Matter. It is all related.
Yes.
What you put out in the world comes back to you, and we're allowing it. We're paying for it. What does Jill say? It costs every American $12,000 a year to support the war machine. Can you imagine what that money could do if it was invested here?
Oh my God.
And we need to build our Green Party from the bottom up, from local elections, city council to, you know, the races nobody's heard of. Just a lot of times you can get appointed because nobody's doing it. All the way to a governor of Illinois. If we get a candidate that gets 5 or more %, we will have 4 years of ballot access.
Yeah.
And that's the work that the Illinois Green Party should be doing.
Right.
And I'm so happy to have the two of you here to help us do some stuff like that. I mean, get out the vote for Jill while this is going on, and then find somebody to run for governor and at least get 5%. So then we'll be on the ballot for the next election. So,
yeah. Well, to one of your that discussion about Islamophobia and realizing how Islamophobic our friends, our family, our neighbors, and just our society in general in the United States are, I think we're beginning to reckon with the fact of how deep it goes and how insidious it is. To piggyback off of Ibrahim Kendi, he argues that the United States is fundamentally racist, where we have systematic racism. And so when we come up in this context, we are by default, because of our nurture and the systems that we are involved in, we are by default racist ourselves. And the only thing we can be is anti-racist. And so I think similarly, we're reckoning with the fact that just like anti-Black racism, this country and this society is deeply anti-Muslim, to the point where the genocide of a majority Muslim population is considered collateral damage, where Islamophobic and anti-Muslim tropes were used to justify groundless wars fought by the United States in the years previous, and they'll continue, right? Because they've been unaddressed. And the fact that there have been so many accounts of death, murder, and violence against Muslims in this past year alone. Right, like just a few weeks ago, there was a 7-year-old girl of Yemeni heritage in Detroit who was playing in a playground. A 72-year-old white man came up to her and slit her throat. She survived. But Wadir, right, whose death anniversary was just a couple of weeks ago, he didn't, right? And he was murdered here in Illinois.
Right.
And it really showed me how Islamophobic we are in the United States, and how much capacity the Muslim community has to turn the other cheek when Wadia was murdered. And the fact that we have gotten not even, like the typical condolences. We haven't even gotten that, right? It's been a general, we're not going to talk about it. That doesn't matter. Sweep it under the rug. The fact that, what was it, just last month when they had that congressional hearing, right, with Dick Durbin, who brought in Wadia's mother to address Congress and to address what he told us, right, the Muslim community here in Illinois, from what we understood, that congressional hearing was going to address anti-Muslim racism and Islamophobia, right? And it was going to center the fact that Wadia, a 6-year-old Palestinian Muslim boy, was murdered brutally in Plainfield, Illinois, stabbed by a military-grade weapon 26 times by his neighbor who knew him, who played with him, who had a relationship with him. The fact that congressional hearing was co-opted by white supremacists and Zionists and made into something about just anti-Semitism and other forms of violence, where they couldn't even talk about Palestinians. Most of the congressional members who spoke in that hearing couldn't even say the word Palestinian. They didn't say Wadia's name. They didn't say anything about Muslims. Instead, they co-opted what should have been a very superficial procedure towards, like some kind of accountability, at least acknowledgement of the real racism and threat that Muslims in America are facing. Instead, it was co-opted into this war machine and war propaganda, right? Where it became, it's not about Muslims, it's about the people who fear Muslims, right? It became Jewish people are not feeling safe. It's Zionists don't feel safe. It's the people that promote war and violence, they don't feel safe. From who? A 6-year-old boy? A 7-year-old girl, and all of the other, like the 3 students from Brown, right? The family that was there was an attempting to drown them. Where was that? In Texas?
There was a woman who was
Texas. Yeah, but there was a Palestinian family who was at a swimming pool, and a white woman tried to drown the children in that family. We get some justice, right?
I heard about that.
The point is, though, that I think we're coming to reckon the people who are paying attention and the people who have consciousness and who are working on their racism. They have come to realize how deeply Islamophobic and anti-Muslim the United States is, and that anti-Muslimness results in the death of and the murdering of our children. And that is happening now, right? That is not something theoretical. That is not a feeling of unsafety. That is our children literally being murdered and multiple attempts, continuous attempts at their lives. And and that's not accounting for all of the desecration of Muslim Students Associations, mosques, Islamic centers, activists having their houses and doxing and being followed by the police. Like, I can tell you from being involved in student activism, I know multiple students who are being surveilled by both the University of Chicago police and the Chicago Police Department. They have active cases against us. We have no idea how they're watching us, to what extent they're surveilling surveilling us, what they're going to use that information for. We do know that in the last year that Congress has been passing legislation after legislation focusing on student activism on college campuses.
Yeah.
And they see that as a real and explicit threat. And they're building up that apparatus so that they can come after us. Right. And this is another reason why I think it's so important for us to get involved in electoral politics, is that if we don't take these positions of power, the people that are in it are going after us. This is a long-term war against us. It's not just a war against the Palestinians in Gaza and the rest of Palestine, and that's spreading over into Lebanon and Yemen and other parts of the Muslim and Arab world. It's also something that is, it's a domestic war against us and the people that support life for all people and dignity for all people. Right. And they're really going after young people on college campuses, right? So it's a collusion between universities, local and national police departments, and then it goes even higher with members of Congress and other politicians all working together to identify, zero in, and target young activists who have the audacity, to turn from their books, right, to the streets and demand equality and dignity for all. Something that we've been constantly asking ourselves as students is like, we got this fancy education, we got a degree from the University of Chicago. For what? What is this education for? If it doesn't result in us having some kind of moral consciousness or moral sensitivity, if all we do is study morality in the abstract, but we are not utilizing and activating what we know, then that's a death. That's a death to our conscience. That's just knowing what the right thing is, but never doing it.
Oh,
and what
it's
I'm
a disembodied brain.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm just a blob, not even a person.
No,
go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, no, I have also been astounded to watch the level of control that Zionism has over our government. I mean, I couldn't believe, like, Harris won't even fake it, or won't, they don't even want to hear something that would be talking about an arms embargo, or even, a lot of times folks lie when they're trying to run for office, right? And they just make up some crap. They're not even do that. They're not even letting them say anything. I mean, I was astounded when I watched every single Democrat vote to starve Palestinians by cutting off the UNRWA and then fund the bombing of them. I watched every single Democrat voted for that. And I was, and I post, my anger posts, I will never vote for another Democrat again. And the thing is, it's incredible the amount of control, and that control, without a doubt, extends into the police control and the shutting down and the targeting activists. And I will tell you, it's real serious stuff. I mean, the way the Chicago police went after the Black Panthers, I mean, they murdered.
Yeah, word.
So it's serious that these assaults, by the police and by our government agencies, that's the real thing. That is absolutely the real thing.
I would also.
What's funny? Go ahead.
I would also say that the average American person has been propagandized into this state of fear that has been pushed by these systems of injustice. Our government, our media, it's a constant stream, especially if you watch mainstream media, of be afraid of, foreign people, be afraid of Muslims. These people are terrorists. Be afraid of Trump. Be afraid of this.
Yeah.
Be afraid of COVID. Be afraid. It just goes on and on and on. And these people have just been so. I mean, their brain has just been seeped in this fear, and to try to break them out of that, it's really difficult.
That's what killed Wadir, right?
Yeah, most people here want this to stop. It's like a 2/3 majority want this to stop. But I think what's happening in Gaza has made us discover our government doesn't work for us anymore, because if like 68 to
Our
70%
government never
of the
worked for us.
people, well, I mean,
It's been a constant op for us.
yeah, I know, but people thought it did, and I think
No,
it never
not
did.
us. We knew it didn't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, people.
But it's great
people
that
did think that it did.
There's an awakening.
Right. It woke up people that thought, well, I vote and they're doing okay, right? But the average American, like across the country, they're finding out it's a sham, and unfortunately, it had to come to something like this to make them see that. But if we can get past their fear, I mean, no good decision was ever made out of fear.
Yeah.
There's no strength in that. So we're asking you to be brave.
Yeah.
And vote for Jill.
I just want to respond that really resonates with me, and like why I decided to like jump on this with Safia, because like as you're talking about how people are conditioned to think in a certain way, and Scott earlier mentioned the brainwashing into duopoly, where we feel trapped or we don't even realize that we're trapped in like a system, and this is how the way things work, and nothing outside of this will ever come to fruition. After I graduated from the Div School, I've been in kind of nonprofit spaces ever since then, and also particularly interfaith spaces. And I was kind of deciding if I wanted to stay there and like keep doing this and kind of build my career in that space, because I just have a long history of kind of working and being in those spaces. My parents were very active after 9/11 and, kind of trying to build bridges and like create understanding in my community. I grew up in Minnesota. But this ever since October, and that was like my first year into working after my graduation, and just seeing how quickly people run, and even in spaces where they tout, morality, where they tout plurality and healing and inclusiveness and embracing everyone, they're so afraid of being political, and they're so afraid of being or taking a stance that might offend another group, whether that's founded or unfounded. When there's a clear line of justice and injustice, when there's a clear line of humanity and inhumanity, and not being able to take a stance there, it just showed me how delicate the structure of like interfaith is built on. It's really nothing. There's no foundation there. And it's just a bunch of lip service, and the whole being in different organizations and hearing the same thing. We have to be apolitical. We have to be apolitical. That's when I knew I needed to get political.
Yep. I hear that a lot myself. I hear that a lot myself.
That is absolutely done on purpose.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, there is supposed to be a separation between church and state. I understand, but when it's about human rights, that's not political. I thought that was the work of all religions, all churches. The one that I attend, I won't mention it here because I don't want to out them, but I'm getting like kind of like a one-armed embrace, I guess. Like I bring up the things that we're doing locally all the time. We're going to screen the movie Where Olive Trees Weep on November 4th. So if you're in Carbondale, please come. It's going to be at the Guyon Center at the college. But if you go to Where Olive Trees Weep, their website, you can find it on there. It's got all the screenings listed. And just our activists always bring stuff in and having them announce it. But I can't speak about it in front of them unless I take up like this little space they have for just, the congregation to come tell about something that's going on with them. And, but I want a presentation to be part of the service. This is our work. They're an organization that prides themselves on social justice. Well, this is the biggest social justice issue of our time, in my opinion. Why aren't we all just out in the street, and stepping onto the sidewalk and holding up a Jill sign, because that's the person that's going to change it. And I'm having trouble making sense of it, to be honest. Go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, I mean, I come from a Christian background, and I always, I'm atheist, but I always thought that my thinking is like Jesus was really cool. And the things that we're taught about him were, that's kind of stuff I follow. And then I see the Christian church, and they're not even close. And in fact, they're the opposite. I mean, I've heard that there are more Christian Zionists than Jewish Zionists.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know the story behind it. It's a real sick story, the end times thing. It's gross. It's disgusting. But that's what they believe. I mean, how twisted are you to have that kind of a belief? And
Go ahead and give us the cliff notes for people that.
Well, I'm going to do it wrong, but it's the idea that that Israel has to rise so that when Jesus comes back, he's going to kill everybody who's not Christian, including the Jews, and then the rest of the Christians are going to go up to heaven. Oh, you guys are looking like you never heard this.
I didn't know the detail.
Yeah,
I didn't think they existed.
We're probably
creepy.
butchering
Sick.
it, but
It's totally sick and disgusting. So they want Israel to rise because they're so anti-Semitic that they want Jesus to come down and kill them all. I mean, it's really. But in order for Israel to rise, the Palestinians have to be genocided. I mean, and so that they're okay with that. Honestly, that's Christian Zionism. It's the main aspect of Christian evangelical, Christian evangelical world. Yeah, it's absolute sick, and that's a big part of Christian America.
I have heard.
It's also one of the ways of bypassing. It's also one of the ways of bypassing Palestinian human rights.
Yeah.
By referring to the Bible and saying that God promised this land to the Israelites.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter if you're being dispossessed. It doesn't matter that you're being occupied. It doesn't matter if there's apartheid. It doesn't matter if there's genocide. It's means that are necessary to bring about the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven. And also the third holiest site in Islam, Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem, which has been a site of, heavy contestation, which is a religious issue that is very political, right?
Yeah.
One of in the plan of that is wa alaikum assalam, Muhammad Ahmed. It is to destroy Masjid al-Aqsa or peace, or the Dome of the Rock that we know of. And Masjid al-Aqsa is a lot bigger though than just the Dome of the Rock. That's usually how people associate it. It's the entire kind of grounds, the entire complex. But the Dome of the Rock in particular has been a political issue for Israelis. And the mayor of Jerusalem has multiple times incited violence, calling on lay Israelis and settlers to go and take over the mosque. And their plan is to demolish and destroy the mosque and to replace it with the temple. And for them, in their very religious and political imaginary, that's rebuilding the Temple of Solomon. Okay. And they believe that is part of both Christian and Jewish Zionist beliefs that's a part of like this prophecy that they have to fulfill in order for the end times, or to usher in this like some age that they're both like kind of vying for. But what that means is for Muslims is that every Ramadan there is raids, there's an escalation of violence. It's not just during Ramadan, it's every now and then there will be some kind of incitement of violence. And it's not just by settlers, right? The settlers have their own kind of unique position where they can get away with a lot of weird stuff, right? So like, for example, they'll try to bring in sacrificial animals, right? And try to do some ritual sacrifice that they believe is necessary for this political objective. And then the Israeli military will go in, they'll raid, they'll beat, they'll shoot with rubber bullets, worshippers. Actually, when I was in Jerusalem 2 years ago, I visited, in 2022, the first thing you see, right, because it's gated, right, the entire complex is gated, and the first thing you see before you go in is all of these armed soldiers with military grade weapons, and it's just, they're lined up. Most of the gates are blocked. They have very intense control of movement, and they're who are they? Who are they defending against? We're all worshipers, you know. And when I talk to some of them about why they're doing this job, why they're such a violent presence, how do they justify carrying such huge guns and constantly, you know, raiding the mosque? All they can say is that they have rocks, and sometimes the young men throw rocks at them. That's all they got.
Right.
That was their only justification. And mind you, there are some Arab Muslims within the Israeli military apparatus, right? And this, just like we see black, brown Muslim cops beating down on pro-Palestinian activists today, like right now, or we see black officers kill and brutalize other black people, and civilians. We're seeing also in Palestine this kind of, diversification of oppression, right? Where Palestinians are given, some of them, not all of them, some of them are given the option of opting into, like, rescinding their Palestinian identity and opting into this false and oppression-based identity of being Arab Israelis, where then they become, they legitimize the state of Israel and its ethno-nationalism. But also they opt into being part of the police and the military. And those people are often sent, right, to be the direct contact sometimes when they're trying to brutalize and terrorize Palestinians. Yeah. And so that's some of the people that I spoke to were Arab Israelis who are working within the security and state apparatus, and who are on the front lines of causing violence, of advancing these very violent agendas and terrorizing very sacred places. And one of the soldiers, the Muslim soldier that I talked to, what's funny also is that when you go in, sometimes they'll ask you whether or not you're Muslim, and they'll do like this check, right? And so they'll tell you like, oh, if you want to come in, you have to recite, some verses from the Quran or something, right? And like some of them are like, how would you even fucking know? You're not even Muslim. But so one time I was talking to this this soldier who's in front of the gates in Masjid al-Aqsa, and he was telling me that he's Muslim and he's proud, and like he's trying to connect with me. And he's trying to small talk with me. And he's like, oh, where are you from? You're from America? Tell me about America. What do? You have a job? You're a student? What? And I'm like, none of that matters. Tell me why you're here.
Right.
Tell me what a Muslim Palestinian is doing here. And he's like, no, I'm Israeli. This is Israel. And he was so adamant about that. It was almost like I was really poking a fragile part of his identity, and he had to keep doing that. But at the same time, he wanted to make friends, right? And he was really curious. And so we had this long conversation. It was like 15 minutes or so. What I found out was like, I was asking him, don't you feel bad as a Muslim, right? As Muslims, we pray 5 times a day, at least, right? And he has the third holiest mosque in front of him, right? Like a step away from him. And I'm like, do you ever go in there to pray? And he's like, no, I can't.
Oh my God.
And I asked him why. And then he's like, there's a lot of bad people in there.
Oh.
And then, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm like, what bad people? These are your people, aren't they? They're other Muslims. And he's like, no, there's some bad guys. They throw rocks. And I'm like, you have all this military gear and you're afraid of rocks? And then he'll like switch to a different excuse. He'll be like, oh no, it's because I'm wearing all of this combat gear and I can't make ablution, I can't make wudu, like I can't purify myself. And I'm like, that's okay. Just take it off. It's fine. You got the whole day. You're here all day, right?
Well, and I'm sorry you chose that. And it reminds me of a lot of things that have happened in this country. Yeah, fear is the hunter. My friend Joe said, and there's a very, very long comment here that I'll put up in a second. But they used to do that for Jim Crow. African Americans got the right to vote, and then they were doing all kinds of things to keep them away, like giving them tests and all this stuff. Like everything you're saying has been tried before and tried here.
Yeah.
So we kind of created the model and we exported it
cyclical
apparently.
exchange.
Yeah.
But I did want to show this Verixania. I'm probably getting that all wrong. Even pagan faiths preach against genocide in their myths. Genocide is universally condemned amongst all faiths.
Yeah.
Zionists who call themselves religious are inevitably going against their own faith, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I've always kind of had a problem with. I saw some meme somewhere that this person dies, they go to be judged, and I don't remember what religion they're talking about. So let's just say it's none or all. I have no idea. And said, well, I want to get into heaven. And then they discover heaven was already given to them here on earth, but they squandered it. And I think that's so powerful. Like we could have what everybody is seeking if we just cooperate with each other and make life good for each other. Right. And then everybody worship however you want to worship, but why not make it good here now? I don't understand that. Why is all this hate infused in different portions of the Christians or the Zionists or our governments and all that? We could have a wonderful society. It just has to be greed and the lust for power. I don't know what else it can be.
Well, I do think it's the divide and conquer strategy. Mm-hmm. It certainly exists in our press. I mean, it's completely throughout our press, divide and conquer. And so, the whole duopoly concept, right? I even saw, and I wanted to say, I love the latest pamphlet that you did, the poster where you said to stop genocide and ecocide. And I think that that's really, really important. I do think that, I when this all happened, I was shocked that the world I lived in wasn't, supporting trying to stop genocide. And I thought, okay, so that wasn't enough. What is it going to take that's going to get Americans to actually wake up to what's going on, the way our government, is handling our lives? And I decided it's going to be climate change. That's the thing that's going to do it. And I know you don't think so.
No,
but
I don't.
I just think, I kind of stupidly have the Weather Channel going all the time. But it's just to see, like, I swear every single day a record is broken, right?
Yeah.
So now just in New Mexico, massive flooding. And that was today, it's every single day is a disaster. And insurance companies have pulled out of California, they pulled out of Florida. I mean, people's lives are all going to fall apart. That's the reality. Except maybe in the West, we might.
I know that it should affect them. I think the problem seems so large that they just treat everything as one individual incident. They don't. It's like people can't fathom the catastrophe that's headed our way. And personally, I think
that's here right now.
I know. I mean, because it happens all over, and it doesn't happen to everyone at the same time. But they have made service automatic, and they are going to include people that aren't citizens, which makes me wonder what they're doing at the border. Like all these people in detention centers, I mean, this is my theorizing. I don't know the details, but I do know that was something that passed the House. I never did get a chance to check back to see if it passed the Senate, but they rubber stamp a lot of stuff. And I think they're prepping for World War III because they're trying to start it.
Certainly.
So, and then if the draft starts and people start to realize, oh, this person sitting next to me on the sofa might have to go die somewhere else in the world, that's when they're going to get involved. And I can see it, and I don't know why everybody else can't. Like, I'm trying to prevent that from happening. Like, you got to take your blinders off and look at the situation realistically and go, they don't care if we live or die, not any of us, because it just makes them more money.
Now, you make a really good point that you're right. It's a contest. It could be World War III. And yeah, people have no idea that we have a draft. They have no idea that we have a draft. And they will certainly call it up. So,
Yeah.
no, I'll agree. That one could do it too. But
that I think that's the one that will do it, because it will be someone they love. It will be personal.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the only way some people will move.
Unless they believe that there's something worth fighting for. I mean, like we saw, like after 9/11, how we sent so many young people to fight wars, endless and meaningless wars, in so many countries, right? For that haven't really ended, right? They say that it ended, right? But we still have troops and contractors in those countries.
Yep.
And people still buy it. I think a lot of people still believe in the notion of military service and serving your country, and this fear of a terrorist and terrorism that's going to take away their freedoms and whatever they believe to be so great about America. And it's not beyond our government to weaponize, just like we've seen 9/11 and October 7th, to weaponize tragedies into full-scale justification for wars, endless wars, unconditional wars, with endless collateral damage, right? So I don't know. I think it's really about narrative, right? I think Ta-Nehisi Coates, tore around his new book about the message, right? I think that's really putting into words a lot of the things that I've been feeling in the last year. Like, I've really been thinking about, in terms of narrative, where has the Muslim American narrative, been? Like it felt like everything we were experiencing post, when the genocide started, it was exactly what we were feeling growing up in 9/11 America.
Post 9/11 America, yeah.
Right. And like the war on terror and what that kind of experience was for us domestically here in the US, growing up in that environment, it was like just another cycle. And, I was really questioning to myself, like, how could we have told our stories differently in this last, like, the 24th anniversary of 9/11 or 23rd,
23rd,
right? This year or last year? Yeah, no, this year. This year, 23rd. Yeah. In these 23 years, right, after 9/11, how could we, as Muslim Americans in the United States, or just Americans in general, told these stories differently, that it could have prevented the murder of Wadir, that it could have prevented the mass annihilation of Gazans and Palestinians? And I think this is really our task, right? Us as individuals, people in the Green Party, third party people who are seeking an alternative. We need to craft a narrative that is so powerful and so compelling that when the fear mongers create their imaginary of why we need to sacrifice our sons and daughters and ourselves and the planet for their greed, we have something better. We have something stronger, and we can say no. But it's the fact that we don't have that alternative narrative that is powerful enough. That's where people get wishy-washy and like, confused at worst. At worst they believe in it, like gung ho.
They're confused.
At best they're confused, right? Like where we can have such moral clarity through our stories and our narrative that like none of this propaganda, this millions and billions of dollars in campaigns and ads and PR campaigns that they have can persuade us otherwise. For us, our tradition, the Islamic tradition, has been very almost like a North Star in navigating a lot of this. When you guys were talking about the apocalypse and stuff, it just came to mind one of the narrations of the Prophet is that if the end times comes, and that's up to interpretation. You can feel like the end times is now. He said that if any one of you has a seed, plant it.
Even
And
if the end times is upon you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I would
like
like to
that
say-
for us is such a resilient theology, but also a resilient politics that
And a
even
hopeful one.
so hopeful.
That's what I would say we are doing here. We are the Green Party.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do have some comments I want to put up. I believe you guys know.
Word.
Social media and the role of social media in breaking sort of the stupor that like mainstream media had on the public and especially the young demographic, not even in America, but all over, has been absolutely amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why they're going after them, right? Like they're having meetings with
That's
TikTok
why
executives.
they want to ban TikTok. Mohammed says
exactly.
TikTok was a huge factor in breaking the narrative because it wasn't an American company and the U.S. couldn't pressure it to change the algorithm.
And exactly.
Then a multipolar world is critical to limiting the U.S. empire. And, why do we need to be an empire? Why can't we just be a country among countries?
Right. And, as far as the social media, I think one of the really, along with TikTok, I think what's been really important is the rise of the YouTube channels, because there's even culture being created in those scenes. Like if Revolutionary Blackout Network and Brianna Joy Gray and Do Disman. There's so many of them that now it's Savvy Sab's right. There are places where people now go and there is community being built. It's all over a different structure, but there definitely is community being built through those devices. And I can tell you 2016, 2020, there was nothing like that. The Green Party was invisible on social media. Nothing. And it is completely different this time around. And Jill, she's done a really good job of recognizing the important aspects and really pushing those and making genocide the focus. And that is why, like Revolutionary Blackout Network and Nick Cruz, he's a rough guy to convince. I mean, he had Cornel West on early when Cornel West announced, and he ripped him to shreds. And because Cornell's brain is still in the mainstream media brain. He is still pretty duopoly oriented. Even though, of course, he has some good ideas, he wasn't there. And Nick has really decided that the Green Party is the right place. And absolutely. And so that's been a big help too, to help coalesce an alternative media space that is encouraging of electoral politics, because that's the other thing that's been really difficult about being on the left. I live in a world where my folks love to protest. That's not so much the LGBT queer scene, but I'm also in a very active protesting world in Chicago. And for them, like electoral politics, that's not cool. And, that's been a really difficult challenge too, because what are they protesting? Laws that got passed, Supreme Court decisions, which were the Supreme Court justices were put on by the people you vote for. So it all comes back to electoral politics. There's no way to avoid that.
Right. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I mean, I've kind of made my point in terms of that we need electoral politics to be as out there and in your face as the protest movement. And that's one thing I think that has not been great about the Green Party, and that's why we need to change it. It needs to be stronger. It needs to be the anti-imperialist political party. Because, I mean, I can tell you that the Democrats aren't even coming back. They are a Republican Party now. And they're pro-war, they're pro-genocide, they're pro, they don't care about the environment. They really don't, at the rate they drill and frack. So we need to really make the Green Party a strong place. And this is certainly the time in the presidential election with Jill Stein, who is the right person for the time also. This is the time that the Green Party needs to really grow and be a real force.
Yes. So I've just put up this comment real quick, but I'd like to read it. Yeah, convincing my anti-electoral friends to participate is almost as difficult as convincing loyal blue and red voters. But
It
here's
is.
what I'll say to that. We need to use every tool we have in our box because we are going up against power. We have our voice, we have our feet, we have people power. We need to protest. We need to vote for people that represent our interests, that actually represent us, and we can see because we know where they get their money from. The Green Party gets their money from regular people. They don't have billionaires and PACs and all that kind of thing. We need to pick where we shop. Don't go to places that support things that you don't believe in.
Yeah.
We need to support divestment movements. All these things, we need to use every tool, and electoralism is a big tool. So come on, protesters, get on board.
Well, and again, another thing that I think we need to do is we need to be coalition building more than that the Green Party does. That we need to co-sponsor events. We need to be out there at the protests, with Green Party swag on to be more visible, and so that so we can help tie that together. Because I know that in one of the big protest groups I'm involved with is called Gay Liberation Network, and I've been pushing my Green Party stuff at them, even though they're kind of anti-electoral politics. And there is a merge happening because, again, it's really just the networking aspect. They know us, we know them. We're doing all these things together. Friendships are being built. Connections are being made, and that's the thing. We have to make the Green Party higher profile because, it has.
And we're doing that right now. Well, we're at 8:02. We passed an hour a minute and a half ago. Would anybody like to say a real quick closing thing? Mine would be thank you for coming.
Mine's going to be a real quick plug for a Green Party rally and concert that I'm having. It's called Green Tambourine Concert, and it's at Carrie's Lounge on Devon, just east of Western. It's right pre-election, so we're going to have sandwich boards for folks to walk up and down close to the polling places saying "Write in Jill Stein," and flyers and some lawn signs too. You can stick right by the polling places, and that's Sunday, November 3rd at 6 p.m. and that's Carrie's 2251 West Devon. So, and I'm performing also Jean Ricard in Eponymous Groove and Adam Gottlieb in One Love. So that's all happening. So please come to that if you're in the Chicago area.
And don't forget to sign up for Where Olive Trees Weep, November 4th here and around Carbondale. You can go to the Where Olive Trees Weep website and find it. It'll be at SIU at the Guyon Theater. And Safia and Hajra, do you have anything to add before we sign off?
I'll say thank you, first of all, for having us on. And we are, we're ready to, give it our all until November 5th. And we're also looking for, people who feel like they can step up and be, representatives. We'd be happy to connect with anyone in their local areas. And, let's build a place where the hopeful people can come to.
Yes. Join the Green Party. Go to ILGP.org and join us and help us create something wonderful together. We need people.
I will say, so my last thing is, I'm not a diehard Green Party fan. I learned about the Green Party seriously around the same time that I took over. So this is I'm Green Party years old as much as I'm chair year old. For me, the reason why I'm investing my time, my energy, my youth into a third party like the Green Party is because I believe that we need to have more choices in our democracy, that we can't just be complaining that we're stuck between genocide in two different colors, and then not do anything about building up an alternative. So I would say to those people who are anti-electoral but are grieving and enraged about the state of the world, the question is up to you. Like, power is gonna be powerful, and we are uniquely positioned in the United States to participate in it, even if it's a flawed participation. And so if you don't want to take advantage of that, then you're relinquishing a privilege. Really, it's not a right, it's a privilege that you have compared to other people. Something that I reminded a group in Little Palestine just last week. Time is an illusion.
Last week.
If you're not motivated to vote for yourself, then vote for a Gazan. Because if a Gazan had the privilege that we have of voting out their genocide and voting in a party like the Green Party that affirms their life, they would be voting. So the fact that we have that, it's so easy. Like, honestly, I haven't voted since the 2016 election, and that was out of fear of Trump. Right. This is my second time voting, and I did it same day. I'm from New York. I'm not from Chicago. I registered same day. It was so easy. It took me 20 minutes. I went downtown and I did it. If it's only a 20-minute task, and it has so many consequences, I don't understand why we're not doing it, right? And all of the stories we tell ourselves are ways that people have disempowered us. And if we continue to tell ourselves those same stories, oh, it's too hard, oh, it's not going to do anything, politics is yucky, all of the different stories that are playing in people's heads, those in effect disempower us. And we need to start crafting new stories. I would say for the people whose friends are anti-electoral, give them a different story. Tell them why you are investing in the Green Party. And don't give them like, oh, Jill Stein is so great, I met her, blah, blah, blah. Like, for me, honestly, as someone who was previously anti-electoral, I don't care. Tell me how this is important. Tell me how this is going to help me achieve the things that I care about. And that's ending the genocide and ending these endless wars. If you can figure out and really, craft your message to the people that you're trying to organize with, to bring in, then see what's important to them and show them how the Green Party is an avenue of achieving those goals in a real way. And another thing that's really different about the Green Party that is convincing me to invest in it is that 5%, right? That wide level ballot access that distinguishes it from other third parties.
Yeah.
Right.
And the fact that we can very easily get that 5% of national votes to get federal funding and to actually build up a third party, right? This is a once in a lifetime opportunity, right? Like, we're never going to have this much activation. I don't know, like the fact that we have witnessed a genocide for an entire year, I have never seen people more activated than right now. And so if we don't take advantage of that right now and bring people in and get that 5%, which is a very achievable victory, right? They say like Jill Stein and the Green Party is not winnable. We have a winnable goal. We can do this in November, right? And even if you don't believe in Jill Stein, even if you don't believe in the Green Party, that 5% goes towards diversifying our democracy, goes towards establishing an anti-genocide, anti-ecocide party. And, like, we can talk about what it should be, what candidates we should prop up afterwards. But we have a very time-sensitive and critical moment right now. November 5th, we got to get 5%.
Yeah.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Well, that was fantastic, and I hope you all enjoyed the show. I hope to have you guys back after the election. So everybody have a good night. And
Thank you so much. Thank you, Edie, for having us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Until next time.
Do